The check for $10,000 sat on my kitchen table like a death sentence, and honestly, I just stared at it for a while, wondering if this was how it all ended for me, after everything. Bethany Ashworth, pearl necklace flashing in the morning sun, stood there in my doorway, giving me that victory smile, you know the kind, like she'd already spent the money she was about to squeeze out of me. "Your garden violates community aesthetics," she declared, pointing at the tomatoes and sunflowers that, truth be told, were the only things holding me together after Afghanistan. What she didn't know, though, was that this wild patch of green sat on land gifted to me by Governor Patricia Mills herself, and the deed buried in my basement could destroy everything she'd spent years building for herself. But let me back up and tell you how I even ended up in this war I never wanted. 6 months earlier, I was in a shoebox apartment in Detroit, eating stale cereal, drinking bad coffee, and living off disability checks, haunted by nightmares and that endless, gnawing sense of regret. 3 tours in Afghanistan as an army medic. Those don't just leave you with scars you can see. I couldn't hold down a job, couldn't make it through a crowded grocery store without my hands shaking. The smell of diesel set off panic attacks. The world felt like it was shrinking around me, tighter every day, until one Tuesday at the VA, Dr. Sarah Bennett, my therapist with that gentle, steady optimism, said, "Decker, there's a property in Millbrook that might just be what you need. It's not charity. It's recognition. Some program called the Heroes Home Initiative, governor's signature and all, a place just for veterans." I almost laughed. Stuff like that doesn't happen to people like me. But it did. The paperwork felt fake at first. Michigan state letterhead, tax-free land. A house with no mortgage, no landlord, just air and space and quiet. The place was more beautiful than I could have imagined. 2 acres, old oaks, a modest ranch house, quiet neighbors, and more room to breathe than I'd had in a decade. The previous owner left a shed full of tools, almost like he knew I'd need something to keep my mind busy. I never set out to be a gardener. It just happened. Dr. Bennett said getting my hands dirty might help, so I planted a few tomatoes. They grew. I kept going. Before long, I was losing myself in the dirt, finding a rhythm. The garden became therapy when nothing else could reach me. It didn't stay just mine for long. Gold Star moms from my old unit started mailing seeds. Heirlooms from sons who didn't come home. Purple heart tomatoes, Cherokee purples, yellow cherries that reminded someone of Tennessee. My little patch of dirt became a living memorial. I made a sign, for those who didn't come home, and staked it by the vegetables, nothing fancy, just real. Every morning, I'd wander out barefoot, coffee in hand, talking to the ghosts who kept me sane when sleep wouldn't come. That garden saved my life. No exaggeration. So when Bethany Ashworth strolled onto my property that September morning, the world went sideways. I was deadheading marigolds when her white Lexus rolled up, vanity plates gleaming, like she owned the whole state. She climbed out in a cream blazer that probably cost more than my rent ever did, folder under her arm, smile sharp as a scalpel. "Good morning," she sang out, like sugar in your teeth. "Bethany Ashworth, HOA president for Millbrook Estates. We need to discuss your property situation." She drew out situation like a cop announcing bad news. I wiped the dirt off and walked over, feet silent on the grass. "What can I do for you, ma'am?" I said, keeping it cool. 3 tours of war teach you how to read people, and everything about her screamed trouble. She opened her folder, handed me a document that looked all kinds of official. "This agricultural mess," she said, waving at my garden, "violates Section 47.3 of our standards. Visual aesthetics, property values, neighborhood harmony." She rattled it off like a prayer. I blinked. "Ma'am, this is my property. I'm not sure what authority you have here." I was calm, but inside, old anger started smoldering. She smiled, showing teeth. "Mr. Rothwell, you agreed to abide by community standards when you purchased this home. Vegetable gardens in the front must be under 50 square feet. Yours is a violation." Then she slapped down a check for $10,000. "Compliance fine, immediate payment required," she said. "You have 72 hours, or it's $1,000 a day after that." I felt my chest tighten. That was everything I had, my safety net, my peace of mind, reduced to a piece of paper, signed with a smile. I tried to reason with her, told her it was VA-prescribed therapy, that those plants were memorials for soldiers who never made it home. She didn't care. That's very touching, Mr. Rothwell, but emotional appeals don't override community standards. Her eyes were hungry, though, not just annoyed. She looked at my land like she already saw something else there. Wedding arches, maybe, or some perfect backdrop for the next real estate brochure. That afternoon, I called Dr. Bennett at the VA. Decker, this doesn't sound right. Properties in the Heroes Home program have special protections. She promised to look into it. I dug into Bethany's history online. HOA president for 6 years, always the same pattern. Violation notices, impossible demands, and then, somehow, the properties end up sold to some shell company. Always for less than they were worth. The next morning, Mrs. Finch, silver-haired and sharp as a tack, showed up with cookies and a warning. Bethany had run this playbook before. She's targeting homes that photograph well, Mrs. Finch said. Her daughter runs a wedding photography company. Every time someone sells after these violations, their yard ends up in wedding magazines. That night, I found the proof. Tiffany Ashworth Photography, $2,500 garden shoots, my neighbor's yards transformed, even renderings of my own garden in the coming soon section. You ever realize someone's not just out to ruin you, but to profit off your pain? What's your move? Call a lawyer, call the cops, start planning your own little war. Because the next week was hell, daily violations for everything you can imagine. Sunflowers too tall, drip irrigation unpermitted, caterpillars labeled as pests, solar lights illegal, birdbath unauthorized. Even my hand-built gate wasn't up to code. Every day, new notices, hand-delivered by strangers. By day 7, a certified letter arrived. Remove the garden or face liens, daily penalties, and legal action. That's when Mrs. Finch returned, this time with Tom and Betty Henderson. Old neighbors run out by the same tactics. They handed me a folder with 17 violation notices, 6 months of hell, all ending in a forced sale to Lakeshore Development LLC. Guess who the managing member was? Bethany Ashworth. Her family ran the bank that found problems with their mortgage right after they pushed back. I called Dr. Bennett and my old squad leader, Mike, who'd become a paralegal. They both told me to check my deed. Federal land grants for veterans came with protections that trumped any HOA. That night, I broke into the old filing cabinet in the basement, and there it was, an executive order, permanent federal easement, stating that any interference with my use of the land was a federal crime. Title 18, Section 1341, Mail Fraud, Wire Fraud, Conspiracy. It hit me. She wasn't just bullying a vet. She was picking a fight with the federal government. The next morning, Bethany texted, "Garden removal begins Monday, 8 a.m. Do not interfere." She included a photo of a bride in my garden, taken while I was at a VA appointment. She was already using my property for her business. That was federal evidence. I forwarded it all to Dr. Bennett and Mike. Monday arrived gray and tense. 2 trucks with landscaping crews, Bethany's Lexus, and Tiffany's van pulled up like a parade. Bethany, decked out in boots and a safari outfit, marched over. "We're here to bring you into compliance." I stood up, deed in hand. "Ma'am, this is federally protected property. What you're about to do is a federal crime." Her smile froze. "That's absurd. You're bluffing." She ordered the crew to start tearing up the garden anyway, but the foreman hesitated, sensing trouble. Just then, a black sedan with government plates rolled up, and out stepped a woman in a suit. Patricia Hang, military attorney, followed by Colonel Morrison, the governor's liaison, and Agent Lisa Kowalski, a federal investigator. Bethany tried to assert her authority, but Agent Kowalski started snapping pictures, explaining that every violation notice, every fine, was evidence of federal crimes. Even the landscaping crew was at risk of becoming accomplices. Bethany panicked, called the county sheriff, but Deputy Rodriguez took one look at the federal badges and said, "This is out of my jurisdiction." More neighbors gathered. Mrs. Finch and the Hendersons brought their folders. Channel 7 News pulled up, and suddenly, Bethany's empire was crumbling in front of a crowd. Agent Kowalski laid out the evidence: fraud, conspiracy, shell companies, even mortgage manipulation. Tiffany, Bethany's daughter, looked devastated. "You said these were legitimate venues, Mom. I never would have done this if I knew." Agent Kowalski read Bethany her rights, handcuffed her on my lawn, and the news vans caught every second. For the first time, Bethany had no comeback. She'd picked a fight with the wrong vet and lost everything. The fallout was huge. Bethany went to federal prison. Her husband lost his banking license. Her son lost his job as a county inspector, and their shell companies were seized. But the biggest change wasn't just one woman going to jail. It was the law that followed. The Michigan legislature passed new protections for veteran land grants. The Heroes Garden initiative expanded, and my garden became a memorial, a sanctuary for veterans like me. Now I run therapy programs for other vets, teaching them what Dr. Bennett taught me, how to find peace in the soil. 3 years later, my garden's the heart of the community, and I wake up every morning, coffee in hand, walking barefoot through the dew, talking to old friends who never made it home, knowing the land that healed me will keep healing others, long after the names of people like Bethany Ashworth are forgotten. The real revenge? It wasn't a court victory or even the prison sentence. It was turning a battlefield into a place of hope, watching something grow where someone once tried to tear it all down. So let me ask you, right here, right now, where do you stand on HOA power, on protecting veterans, on who gets to decide what's beautiful or valuable in a community? Share your story, your opinion, your own fight. Sometimes, the loudest victories aren't in the headlines. They're in the quiet moments, in the gardens we build, and the lives we help put back together. You know what I mean?